Welcome to the Inclusive Growth Show with Toby Milden. Future-proofing your business by creating a diverse workplace.
Hey there, thank you ever so much for tuning into this episode of the Inclusive Growth Podcast. I am Toby Milden, and today I'm joined by Claire Myers-Lamptey, and I'm really excited to be sitting down with Claire because Claire has started a tech startup called BioWired AI. And before I got into diversity and inclusion myself, I worked in technology. So I was an IT consultant for Accenture. I worked in healthcare technology, and Claire's technology is within the wellbeing and healthcare space. And then I ended up as a project manager for the BBC, working on the news website and the BBC Sounds app and accessibility features. So I'm a bit of a geek at heart. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down with Claire to explore the technology that she's developed that we can use within the diversity and inclusion space. But it's also something I mentioned in my first book around the role that technology plays in diversity and inclusion. So technology can help us implement diversity and inclusion in so many different ways. We're seeing lots coming online nowadays, and technology can help us really amplify what we're doing within the EDI space. So it's really great to be sitting down with Claire and just getting to learn more about the technology that she's developing. So Claire, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Toby. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
You're very welcome. That was obviously a bit of a brief introduction. Could you just introduce yourself in your own words? Let us know about who you are, what you do, and your background and your professional accreditations, that kind of thing.
Yes. So my name is Claire Myers-Lamptey. As you said, I'm tech founder of BioWired AI app. I am Black, I am female, I am married, I am mother. And you also alluded to the fact that I've been in IT. I've had quite a varied career, which I think has all contributed to get me to this position that I'm at now. And I enjoyed hearing your diverse background as well.
Brilliant. So how did you transfer from working in biomedical sciences to technology and to HR? That's three very distinct industries that you've worked in.
It is. So my first degree was in biomedical sciences. Then I ended up in investment banking at Goldman Sachs. And one of the good things about that organization was that it was very large, had lots of different departments. And so if you were willing to put yourself forward and acquire the skills needed for that role to demonstrate you had the ability, then it was possible to change career directions. So I went from investment research to IT and then to HR. And yes, in IT, I was definitely sort of coding and project managing. And then in HR, I was focused on diversity.
That's really cool. It's almost similar. I mean, I'm not a sciencey type person, so I've been nowhere near biomedical sciences, but like you, I worked in IT as a project manager, and but I was more interested in the human interface and the human psychology of using tech. So I tended to work in sort of user experience roles and that kind of thing. And then, then I moved into HR myself. So that's really interesting. So what was the inspiration behind developing BioWired AI?
Yes, so part of my evolving career, just most recently, previously, I actually opened a spa. It was a project where I refurbished a derelict former 1790 bank. It was Gurney's Bank. Gurney's became Barclays. And I opened up a spa. I designed it myself. So it changed from a design project into one where I was actively involved in supporting people in their wellness. So on that journey, I became aware of lots of different sort of therapies, treatments, got involved with lots of different types of professionals in order to cater for the clients that visited the facility. And so that is where wellness, technology, human resources, my biomedical sciences background all came together to put me on this journey to create this app.
I just love how all of those different strands intersected at that point in your life. And what's manifesting from that is a new piece of really cool and interesting technology that we'll explore now. So, I mean, could you just explain to us how the BioWired app works and what its key features are?
Yes. So using your mobile phone and a wearable device, the BioWired AI app monitors your state of well-being. So that's your mental, emotional, and physical. And you also control via the app something that we call the e-dome, called the employee dome. And there you can prioritize chapters of your life. So we look at well-being as 6 chapters: health, financial, relationship, for example, environmental, lifestyle. So you can also negate things that would normally be recorded as a bias against you. So you create your perfect world. We use the biometric readings and we come up with an optimal well-being score.
Mm.
When you fall outside of that score, at the first instance, your AI well-being coach will come on board and say, I've noticed you're a bit stressed, for example, and then we'll suggest things that you can do from resources that we have to sort of reduce your stress levels.
Mm.
If there are readings that are concerning, the AI wellness coach will accelerate it to the EAP program that we also bring on board with the app, where you will then have human contact with professionals who may be GPs, therapists, or coaches, who will then try to put a program together to get you back to optimal wellness.
That sounds really cool.
And additionally, a feature we have is daily well-being coaches who come on board just to motivate you. Speaking with my professionals, whether it's about financial well-being or health well-being, 30% is only what the professional can give you in terms of advice or even medication. And they all agree that 70% is dependent on our decision to change the situation that we're in. And so using that theory, we will have daily well-being coaches whose jobs are just to motivate people.
Yeah, that's really cool. Probably something I could do with. So you mentioned that you wear a wearable, and then that's also connected to your own device. So how does it actually measure well-being, and what kind of data is it collecting?
Yes. So in addition to sort of basic physiological data like heart rate, etc., we use another sort of scientific concept, I would say, which also takes readings of your brain, your physiological responses in your body. And these readings are, we derive the readings from loads of charts from studies of lots of people, thousands and thousands of people. And so what it means is that there are optimal levels for every single organ of your body, even emotions, that have been recorded over several years. And so when you fall outside of that, taking into account the biases or the conditions that you have disclosed to the app, that is how we get your optimal well-being range. And not to sound woolly, but we don't want to reveal the actual DNA of how we do it all.
Yeah. Well, it's your secret sauce. It's like the KFC recipe, isn't it? No one's going to give away the KFC recipe. um, you mentioned a couple of times the biases and how we have to take those into consideration so that you've got your optimal employee dome or your own personalized score in a way. What kind of biases are we talking about?
Yes, that's a great question. So we firmly believe that in life, we don't journey on a sort of a straight, unchallenged line where everything is perfect. Life is a sort of a wavy thing. And so if we look at those 6 chapters, at any time, there will be things affecting us that act as a bias. Because what normally happens in organizations is when they're working out KPIs, they are normally modeled on white, male, young, human. And where we fall short of that is a bias because we're measured against this ideal candidate, if you like. So, what the app allows us to do is to be measured against our own strengths and weaknesses. Another element that excites me about the app is that we can use your optimal well-being score in a logarithm with KPIs from the organization to come up with workflow productivity. And that, in theory, should alter depending also on your well-being score. So quite rightly, if your well-being score is low and you need support to get back to optimal, we feel then that your expectations for workflow productivity should also be adjusted in line.
So there's all sorts of different apps and devices out there already. So, for example, I've already used the Aura ring, which I found quite helpful to monitor my well-being. But how does the BioWired app differ from some of the other devices that are already available?
Yes. So in the first version, our wearable device, if you like, is just the size of a key ring, and it requires contact with the body, and you don't have to wear it all the time. We're just relying on weekly readings. Secondly, it's real time, and the changes are measured against your optimal well-being reading. And from what I can gather, a lot of these other devices, they're not taking into account changes in your world or your ecosystem, if you like. It's not a 2-channel reading. We have a 2-channel reading where the app is always taking data from your e-dome, if you like, your ecosystem, together with what is happening in the world. When I say your ecosystem, it's what's created on your app, representing your digital world. So it's bringing together your digital world with your physical world and using both of those data to support your well-being.
That's really cool. And I think one thing that's worth exploring maybe here is how the devices cater for different diverse groups as well. So, for example, I'm a wheelchair user, and I mentioned already that I've used the Aura ring, and these devices don't quite work well for everybody. So, for example, I think my Aura ring is giving me false readings about steps. I don't walk at all. I'm permanently using a wheelchair. Yet at the end of the day, it tells me that I've done 2,500 steps, and I'm like, how on earth did I accomplish that? And then I'm thinking, well, is it giving me an accurate reading of how many calories I've burnt in that day? Because I do have a very sedentary lifestyle because I don't walk. I'm sat in a wheelchair all day, or I'm at bed at night. So how does your app cater for different diverse groups, especially those with disabilities, which I'm particularly interested in hearing about?
Great question. I mean, the exciting thing is that we live in an app world. So, for instance, if you use a hearing aid, we can connect that data to the app. So BioWired AI would know that this is a person who has hearing limitations. In the same way, with your state-of-the-art wheelchair, I hope there is some sort of app or something that we could also connect to. So it won't be measuring footsteps. It would be measuring something else. What we decide to measure is based on the communication between the two devices. So I can't say offhand what we'd use to measure in your situation, but there are lots of things that we can decide to measure to record your movement together with your physiological data.
That's really interesting because, so, for example, if I am taking a car journey and I've got a wheelchair accessible vehicle, so I drive my wheelchair into the car, I imagine that actually I probably use up a lot of energy in the car because my muscles are having to work against the movement of the car, rocking side and side and braking and accelerating and stuff like that. So it'd be really interesting to compare the data of me in the car versus me just sat at my desk recording a podcast like we are now. That would be really cool.
Absolutely. And the more I talk about the app, the same thing that's just happened happens. There are more questions that are raised. And that is exciting because it is going to be an open platform that you can plug in different things and use the data how you want to use it, which brings me on to the point of privacy. This is being marketed as a HR tool. Your data does not go to your employer. What happens is all your personal data stays on your phone. Any information that we're using in order to monitor you is sort of encrypted in the cloud. And all the company gets, or the HR platform gets, is indicative data, which we feel is also the exciting thing about this app. So your employer gets a snapshot of their organization so they can see that, look, 15% of the workforce are stressed, 10% are suffering from mobility issues that we're not meeting, 5% of the women are going through menopause, there's 10% going through bereavement, that type of thing. And so all decisions they make in terms of supporting their employees with well-being are matched and tailored and not guesswork. I use, for example, sound baths or menopause clinics. I think there was a time, and perhaps still is, where reaction to well-being is sort of reactionary. It's without any sort of science or measurement.
Yeah.
Because how many menopause clinics do you really need in an organization? Is it proportional to the needs of your people? And sound baths, are you tracking how that is improving? Because there are so many things. And I think the term well-being, it's used very general, but as we try to demonstrate in having these 6 chapters, it encompasses a lot of things because we are complicated beings. And what further excites me is that with this tool, companies can now start to monitor the well-being of their remote workers and work from home, because I believe that a lot of them are quite challenged when it comes to supporting that outside of the office.
Yeah, and also the data around people working from home might well support their policies around whether or not they mandate everybody to go back to work. Because if, for example, the policy is everybody has to be in the office 4 days a week, and then they're allowed to work from home 1 day a week, but then that increases everybody's stress levels and reduces their well-being score, then that's probably not a great policy for employee productivity.
Yes, and I love that you've raised this question, because what is key in the media at the moment are return to office mandates. What we're seeing is a bit of a seismic shift, and it's fueled by a lot of different things. You've got AI technologies that are set to transform the workplace in terms of increasing productivity and offering so many other things. You also have got the issue of real estate. So companies have got these amazing offices that no one is using. And then you've got the issue of well-being. And I see it being played out as a fight for equity. And so I think work from home is a very interesting part of this negotiation where employees want more equity within an organization. But I also feel it's part of a bigger discussion that we shouldn't overlook, which is about AI technologies and upskilling your employees for a future economy. We also live in a country where the population is changing. There are far more older people than younger people. The World Economic Forum has predicted that by, I believe it's 2060, 80% of the workforce will come from Asia, Africa, South America. So these are all challenges for companies of today, and companies of today should be looking at solutions. We should be talking about sustainable careers. And you're quite right. The good thing about this app is that it gives a way of measuring workflow productivity. And people that I've told about the app are very interested to see measurements. They'd like to compare how somebody works in the office as opposed to their home. And also, I've started to work with other interesting startups, and one of them is called co-remoting. And that's a very interesting theory as well, or project, whereby it encourages workers to work together from their homes. So that startup is very interested in comparing measurements of workflow productivity in the office, in your home on your own, or co-working in your home. So the idea of this startup co-remoting is that you can open your home to another colleague so you can work together. The reason this has come about is, ironically, in fighting for work from home, employees have also reported a state of loneliness.
Yeah.
Research is showing that people are quite happy with sort of 3 days at home, but there'll be 2 days where they'd like to change their environment. And sort of coffee shops are not always the best places to work in for different reasons. Libraries are being shut. And there is also sometimes a bit of a sterile environment in some sort of co-working spaces. So this is a social exercise because it suggests that you can choose to work with someone based on gender or similar disability, or even as mothers, you could be two single mothers. And by working together, it could also solve childcare issues.
Yeah. It's really cool. Like, there's so many solutions here. And I really like the whole equitable piece, because as you were sort of describing that, I was thinking, when I've worked for companies, I've just been offered the bog standard well-being packages like gym membership, for example, which is absolutely no use to me whatsoever, because I just don't have the physical strength I can't even lift up a pencil, let alone, go to a gym lifting weights. So I suppose using technology like BioWired AI gives businesses very specific data so that they can take the targeted action where it's needed. And this is a general philosophy that I share with my clients anyway, because they get very excited putting their diversity and inclusion strategy together, and they come up with great solutions. And I have to say, hang on a minute, just wait a minute, because do you know if these solutions that you're proposing are actually getting to the root cause of the issues in your organization? is creating a career development program for women because you're worried about the lack of women at the senior leadership position. Is that program actually going to solve the problem? Or is there something much more fundamental and underlying that we need to address? And that's where the power of data comes in. So we need to have that data. We need to have those insights to really understand what's really going on for people in an organization.
Absolutely. And there is where I get excited about AI technologies, because it allows us to map somebody's being, if you like.
Yeah.
And so we can track what is really going on with an individual when they're faced with these issues in the workplace and in life in general. And I think it helps us to get to true inclusivity, because I would like to get to a point whereby, and I think we will get there anyway, because if you think about it, if we're getting to a stage where we're not going to have enough workers and we're having a skill shortage, whatever, the whole way we think about employment has to change. And for me, the ideal is using technology to work out what is a person's strength and weaknesses and creating a job role around that. And that shouldn't be impossible. And even take into account the times of the day that the person is most productive. And so it could also banish 9 to 5.
Yeah. Which is an industrial revolution invention, wasn't it? It was the 8-hour working day was all about productivity in a factory when we were just churning out widgets. It's really not fit for the modern age where we're working in information and technology and a different world.
Definitely. And you touched on compensation, and that's very interesting, because I also raised a scenario with the BioWired app to say, for instance, you could have two individuals and the app could show that one person actually completes all their targets or their job role in sort of 3 days. So what do you do with that person? How do you reward that person fairly? Now, that could be a case that that person then only works a 3-day week and they have 2 days off. Or it could be that do you compensate them with salary, or do you compensate them with other benefits? There are very interesting benefits coming into play, such as, interest-free loans, and also even using, Bitcoin, because it is also possible to replicate your company and to give shares in another dimension that people can exchange for different things. Now, I find that really fascinating.
This is really exciting. Like, this is so space age, isn't it? It's like we might as well be on the Starship Enterprise. It's really exciting.
It is exciting. On the one hand, I can see how people want to slow down and think, hang on a minute, this is just a bit too fast. But for me, it excites me because it really does level the playing field.
Yeah.
It really does address equality, equity, inclusivity, diversity, everything, which is what we've all been striving to do. And suddenly we have the tools and the language and the tech to do this. And I urge companies to really think out of the box, because I'm hearing the same conversations. And that's why I'm so excited to speak with you, because I go to conferences or I listen to webinars and people are saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's just the same old stuff that's just being recycled. And I think particularly within the diversity and inclusion space, there is a lot of frustration that the needle hasn't shifted much over the last couple of decades. I talk to colleagues who've been working in EDI like me for longer than I have, and they're frustrated. They're saying, I'm just repeating the same old thing. I'm saying the same thing today that I said 20, 30 years ago about equality within the workplace, and things are just not shifting. But I think we are in this interesting time where I do think that the introduction of new technologies is really going to help us, and also just the shift that we've seen from us getting through the pandemic and how people's attitudes and relationships to work has changed as well. So I think it's kind of a culmination of all these things are really going to shift things. What's the current status of the app, and when are you hoping to launch it?
Yes, we're hoping to launch it in 6 months. Now, when it comes to the EAP, that will be ready in 4 to 6 weeks that companies can sign up to, and also our research element, because in speaking to companies, it's become apparent that there is an element of guidance that needs to be given in order to prepare for this amazing app that's going to come on board soon. So there are questions that organizations need to ask and get in place before adoption of the app if they're going to get the best out of it, in our opinion. So we're also offering consultation from the beginning of March, which is going to be very interesting and very exciting.
That's cool. I mean, the app is already game changing. How do you think this is going to evolve in the future?
So we would like to map the employee e-dome to the organization ecosystem. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about, disability and access. I mean, it's so exciting that you can use AI technologies now to improve the workplace as a physical place for people to come and work in very quickly and very easily, which is exciting, and at a relatively low cost to what has happened historically.
Could you give me an example of how AI could be used for that?
Yes, so we've been talking about all types of wearable devices. So, for instance, what's really exciting is if you're in an organization that uses sort of multiple office locations, if you like, it could even be global. And let's say that you have a scenario where somebody's blind. We can get to a situation where you can map your company ecosystem in terms of your location, floor plans, and everything, match it to your employees' e-dome. And through the wearable device and their phone, they can quite confidently navigate themselves to any of your locations without any limitations, even if they're blind. And there's no reason why they can't do that.
That's really cool. Yeah. So the penultimate question I ask everyone is, what does inclusive growth mean to you?
Yes, and sorry, we didn't even touch on to neurodiverse. So it also supports neurodiverse in similar ways because, again, it will tap into the strengths of the individual and map them to specific roles within an organization. So in summary, yes, for me, inclusion, I now think we have never been more closer to realizing inclusion. And that's because of technology and the change of the world. And I don't believe that there is now an excuse. And we need to rely on data because we live in a data-driven world. And so if anyone says they're inclusive, I want to see the data.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's something I'm working on as well with the university about how can we collect inclusivity data and present it back to the organization in real time. So, you could have a head of HR log on and see whether the score is going up or down.
Absolutely. It's no longer a word that can be thrown around. We should be talking about inclusive data.
Absolutely.
That would soon tell us how inclusive an organization is.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks ever so much for joining me today. Before you go, if the person listening to us right now wants to learn more about the BioWired AI technology, what should they do?
Please get in contact. I'd love to talk with you at any stage that you're at. This is a really exciting time for us because by speaking to people is really helping us to develop the product and to engage with business. You can Google BioWired app, BioWired AI, and I will come up. Find me on LinkedIn and send me a message. Invite me to connect, and I'd love that.
Brilliant. Well, Claire, thanks ever so much for joining me today. It's been lovely to have a chat with you, and I'm really excited to see how your technology develops, and hopefully we'll start to see it being actively used in businesses to help improve the well-being of people working in organizations. That would be amazing.
Thank you so much, Toby. It's been great fun. And I'm so excited that I've got the thumbs up from you.
Well, I'll be one of your first customers. So put me on your list for when the devices are ready.
Most definitely.
All right. And thank you for tuning into this episode of the Inclusive Growth Podcast with myself and Claire. Hopefully you found it really interesting, and hopefully it's got your kind of brain whirring as to how technology like BioWired AI could actually be used to benefit the well-being and productivity of people working in your organization. So if you are interested in learning more about the technology and how it could help your organization, please do Google BioWired AI, as Claire suggested, or you can connect with Claire Myers-Lamptey on LinkedIn, and she will continue the conversation with you over there. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of this podcast, which will be coming up very soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Inclusive Growth Show. For further information and resources from Toby and his team, head on over to our website at milden.co.uk.